Enjoy the martini.
Martini? You're thinking about martinis?
He's offering drinks.
Oh,
Like the shot.
yeah. Okay, here we are. So, no, we're almost done. Almost done with this 7-day session. Uh, I find in this practice a kind of quickening that takes place. You know what I mean by that? Things, um, things get closer, more intimate. Um, when we look at our mind like this day in and day out, all day long, uh, we get close to what matters. We get closer to life and death, which is what really matters. And uh, if you've been with someone that's dying, I think you know what this quickening is. It's sad to lose someone when they die, especially someone you love. But it's also enlivening to be close to death, isn't it? If you've been close to someone dying, uh, you come away from that experience with a new appreciation of the life you have. So that kind of quickening is what brings us to practice, and it's what wakes us up. Now, that can happen in all kinds of ways, but often it happens through extreme forms of suffering, tragedy, loss, injustice. And I think we could call this the Job moment. So you may know the story of Job. He was had this run-in with God, Yahweh, and it didn't go well. And when we find Job, he's just sitting on an ash heap, the ash heap of his life, everything, everything. every norm, every reference point that he had for sanity was gone. He lost his family. He lost his money, his wealth, his children, his wife, his home, his identity. And in the end, he was betrayed by God. He discovered that God wasn't conscious. God wasn't reflective. God was amoral. And not only that, but God betrayed him. God made a deal, some bargain with the devil to torment Job, who was his faithful servant. So he's been betrayed. So not only has he lost all his earthly possessions and reference points, he's lost his religion, his theology. And I think that Job moment was not unique to Job. Uh, People have had all kinds of moments like this throughout the course of history, and we're capable of treating each other horrifically. So it's not unique to Job, but I think it's might be useful to think of the moment we're in as our kind of Job moment, both individually and collectively, where we are losing our reference points through norms being violated, through institutions collapsing, um, a kind of moral injury and moral confusion taking place about what really matters, about values. So it seems to me that what's required for us to really wake up is that we be willing to descend into our own Job moment, the darkness of that, of no hope. Um, and there's a wonderful story of this in our own Buddhist tradition about Pantakara, who was a beautiful, beautiful woman, nun teacher, one of the most, I think, really important women teachers in our tradition. She lived at the time of Buddha, and she was a very strong-willed woman. So her parents, maybe this was traditional in India, had, um, arranged for her to marry some man who she did not love. It turns out she loved her servant, and she married her servant, which was shocking to her family. Her family was so upset they disowned her, and she had to move with her new husband to a village far away from her family home. And as was the custom in India, when a woman gave birth to a child, it was the custom for the woman to go home to her family. And but when she became pregnant with her first child and was about ready to have her first child, her husband didn't feel comfortable going back to her family, which is understandable. So she gave birth to her first child in the forest. When it came time for her she was pregnant with her second child, she again decided she would go home to her family, and her husband resisted again, didn't want to go. So this time she just left without her husband to go home. And she gets as far as the forest again, and then her husband comes after her, catches up with her. And they get caught in this horrible storm in the forest, big, huge storm. And her husband goes to collect firewood to make a fire, and he gets bitten by a poisonous snake and dies. So she gives birth to her second child in the forest in the midst of this horrific storm and is sheltering now both of her children with her body. And she can't go home to her regular home with her husband because her husband's dead and so she can't go back there anymore. So she doesn't have any choice. She has to proceed to her parents' home in the midst of the storm. So now she's carrying her child and her newborn child, and she comes to this river, this raging river in the middle of the storm. And she has to cross the river to get to her home. But she can't carry both her children across the river, right? So she's forced to tell her older child, not very old, but older than her newborn, to stay on the bank where she is. And she's going to carry her newborn across the river and then come back and get her older child. So she tells her older child, stay on the river and I'll come back and get you. And she takes her newborn, struggles across the river, gets across the river, and kind of nestles her newborn baby on that side and is coming back across the river to get her other second child. And the hawk comes down, swoops down, picks up her child, carrying it away. And she's screaming at the hawk. And as she's screaming at the hawk, her child, her younger child, who she just left, hears her screaming and thinks that she's calling for him or her. And that younger child goes into the river. And as she turns around, she sees her younger child just entering the river and getting swept away and drowned. So she is completely destroyed, right? She's lost both her kids. She's half mad with grief and proceeding on to her parents' home, meets a friend from the village and asks about her parents. And it turns out that her parents, the home, her family home, got destroyed in the storm and killed both her parents. Now she is mad. She's mad, crazy, not wearing any clothes, just totally out of her mind, lost her mind. And she comes to the Jetta Grove where Buddha is teaching. And she's completely disheveled and scary looking. Buddhist disciples see her and they're totally scared. But Buddha sees her and he comes to her immediately, comes to her. And what does he say? He says, sister, it is time to recover the presence of your mind. Time to recover your mind. Now, the thing about this, it's this Job moment that I think is really telling, is it just like when Job was sitting on his ash heap, his friend tried to console him, say, you should have faith in God. He'll be better tomorrow. He's just in a bad mood today. It's one of those Old Testament moods, but he'll recover. So just be patient, be faithful. No, that didn't work for Job. He refused to be consoled by his friends. Same thing with Pantakara. She's lost everything, and she's not ready to be consoled by anyone. No, pop psychology isn't going to work here. No, AI isn't going to work. No, no, uh-uh, no. But the Dharma did work because the Buddha received her and he listened to her. He didn't try to fix her. He said, look at your mind, take a good look. So from the depths of that suffering, she heard some wisdom that was timeless, which is what we can hear too. And she ordained and became a nun and became a very famous teacher with many disciples. I mean, unfortunately, in our Buddhist tradition, nuns are discriminated against. It's not an equal treatment with monks and nuns. Nuns don't have material affluence at all in Asia. They're treated very poorly in most cases. So her realization poem is, she said, I took a needle and pushed the wick down. When the lamp went out, my mind was freed. When the lamp went out, my mind was freed. Freedom, that's freedom. Awakening is freedom. Not freedom from something, but just freedom. Freedom from life and death. To be unborn. To be the deathless. So, Getsu gave a wonderful talk yesterday about living by vow. And, that vow is the antidote to this suffering because it's a quickening into a mind that is infinite, a vow that is infinite. And there's freedom in that. I love this poem by Rumi. What hurts you blesses you. Darkness is your candle. So we can complain about all our ills and injustices, and there are plenty of things to complain about.
Would you read that again?
Huh?
I didn't hear the first line of that poem.
Rumi?
Yeah.
What hurts you blesses you. Darkness is your candle. Now, there's plenty of people that are hurt by life that don't receive it as a blessing, that are taken down by it, that are destroyed. And Job could have been destroyed, but he wasn't because he stayed around. He refused to reject God. He refused to not stay in conversation or relationship with God. So how the quickening takes place. So we have this teaching in Zen about the four kinds of Zen students. You know that one? So the first kind is, they're all metaphors, right? And this is the first kind of Zen student where the quickening does not take place very quickly. In fact, this person waits till the very last moment when they're on their deathbed, and then they finally realize, yeah, I think I might be dying now. Finally, they realize, yeah, I think this is it, That's the horse that doesn't move until the whip hits the bone. The quickening doesn't happen until the very end. So kind of too late by then, right? And then there's the kind of student that where the quickening happens a little faster, and the metaphor is the whip, goes under the skin, and someone in their family dies. that can quicken you. Dogan lost his mother when he was, I think, 8. Most of us have lost family and friends. Yeah, so that can quicken you if you're paying attention. That can quicken you. That can bring you up short to say, hey, there's something here that matters. I need to actually pay attention to life and death because this is important. And Trungpa Rinpoche spoke about the what do you call it? The uh, sunset. Was it the sunset mentality, the sunset vision? When we are playing the games of samsara, basically those games are designed to help us forget about death. All kinds of defense mechanisms to forget, to distract, to procrastinate. Well, yeah, I know I'm going to die, but it's not going to happen today. So, no, say la vie. No, don't need to worry about it. No quickening taking place. But it takes a little, it happens a little faster if someone dies in your family. And that's a Dharma gate. If you open that Dharma gate, you could actually wake up. Then there's a third, as the metaphor keeps, continues, the whip hits the skin, just the surface of the skin, and the horse starts moving. Doesn't take much of the whip to get going. This is someone that's had a death, close loved one, really, really impacts them and quickens the mind, opens the mind, raise the body mind. And it said that, Dogen heard a phrase from the Diamond Sutra when he was a young boy that quickened his mind at that moment. Dwell nowhere and bring forth that mind. What's that mind? That's not the mind of samsara. That's not the mind that's playing games. And again, notice that to both the Job's credit and the Padakantara's integrity is that they refuse to play those games once they have lost everything. They see through those games completely and know that there's no satisfaction in that at all. So that's not going to play those games. Samsara is the wheel of suffering. So, and then the last student is the one that goes even before the whip hits the skin. They just like quicken. They just get a whiff of impermanence, and they quickens the mind, and they go listen to the Dharma. They chant the Heart Sutra, and they wake up. So I think it's useful to think of the moment we're in as our Job moment. And we can take this as a terrible burden and injustice that we could rightfully be angry about. But again, life isn't fair, So if you, like I say in the practice of forgiveness, you have every right to be angry at someone betraying you, an injustice committed to you, to your race, to your tribe, to your family. But if you let that anger take up residency in your heart, then it hurts you. And I think what we have here is a real spiritual tradition that offers the possibility of freedom. And it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because you just can't have nirvana without samsara. You can't have freedom without suffering. It's not possible. We can't know how to take a precept of doing no harm unless we know what it means to harm other people. And we have done that. So what's your Job moment? What is your heart mountain? And how are you working with it?
One thing you can say about getting old. You know, I just guess, as I always say, just pass the crest of the hill and see the other side. There are people circling the drain down there.
Yeah,
You can't, you can't deny it anymore.
it's harder to
And
deny.
it's not that I've had so many intimate contacts with death, either in my family or as a nurse, too many to count.
Yeah.
But not me.
Yeah,
But now it's no denying it.
yeah. So aging is a quickening if we are open to for paying attention. But not everyone pays attention that way. Even getting older, busy going to go get cosmetic surgery, try to look younger,
Oh,
and they don't necessarily sit still with aging and kind of grok it. You just stay busy distracting themselves to the very end.
I know I've talked to you before about my app.
Oh, yeah.
That
Reminds
I
me.
have this great, I think it's great. This is an app, it's free, it's called The Crook. And it's based on some teaching, Buddhist teaching in the country of Bhutan. And or I think it's Tibetan teaching, but if you think about death 5 times a day, then when it actually happens, it's like you prepare for it.
Yeah.
When I tell my friend, so on the app, you get a message 5 times a day, and it just says, remember, you're gonna die. Now, if you're interested, you can hit it and do some kind of quote or something. And people are like, oh my gosh. See about that. And it's yeah, but it's more of a long-term subliminal effect. I can ignore it.
Mhm.
I don't have to open it, it's just there, I just erase it. But when you see it 5 times a day for years, there's a subliminal effect. By the way, I always like once I told you this story when I was in the ER having a problem breathing, getting a NED treatment, and this thing goes off on my phone and says, "You're never gonna die." All right. But I think it's great. It gives you that subliminal awareness that it's always here. And I've seen so many children who never lived to be adults. There is no predicting it.
A lot of Tibetan practices that are also designed to, practitioners go out to the carnal ground and hang out in the graveyard, or there's a whole practice of actually visualizing your body disintegrating and dying step by step by step. You can actually visualize your senses going. It's a practice of the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
And I read about that.
Yeah.
And the only thing it did for me was going to be cremated.
Yeah. No, but this is the process of dying is actually before you get cremated, while you're still awake, while you're still conscious. Yeah.
And dying's easy. See that again. Dying's easy. It's the process. It's torture.
Did not tells the story about how there's an elderly man in Vietnam, and he's getting towards the end of his life. So he takes the family coffin shopping, and they go and he gets measured for his coffin, and he has a bit But it's mainly they send it back home. And he's really excited about having this car. And he's really happy, it's such a good fit, and he's getting in and out of it a couple of times a day. To make sure he's not going out of it, or it's just really cute, he says, that's how we should look at that. It's not, it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen, and it's,
Yeah, I had a Jan Sater, I had a Norwegian art teacher many years ago. He's passed on now. But he used to tell me about, there was a Norwegian artist in Norway that used to sleep in a coffin. I'm getting kind of close to that. Can you imagine? You wake up each morning and say, I'm alive.
Or are those people who wake up in the morning and then, damn, so.
Yeah, they don't take the full measure of that Job moment.
For me, the most significant thing that you said here is that this story about, you know, the woman who lost, the booster, the woman who lost everything.
Mhm.
The Buddha said, it's time to change your mind,
Yeah, time
you
to
know, that's.
retrieve your mind. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's something that. Well, just on a personal level, spending years looking for this. This intimate relationship with some God somewhere. Then, you know, having somebody to deal with them or. Have I been good enough? No, it's not. To be able to look at somebody in this situation and say, you know, you need to change your mind, you need to change how you perceive this, you know.
yeah, or just simply look at your mind without looking
Yeah.
away. Keep our practice is to look at the mind, to actually inquire and sit with the mind. Not doesn't require religion to do that. In fact, religion seems to get in the way. It's not a belief. Now there are contemplative traditions within other Christianity, Judaism, Muslims have Sufis, but they're all in the framework of religious teachings which make no sense, which are stories that are irrational and absolutely don't hold any water in terms of um, science today. I mean, so I mean, you don't really need the religious part. What you need is the contemplative part where you sit down and watch your mind, and then you can figure it out. But if you don't do that, then you try to substitute that direct experience with some belief or dogma that will convince you that, you know, but it's not very convincing.
That's what they call faith.
Yeah, then you have to have faith. And that's what all Job's friends were counseling him to do, have faith in the face of in face of God's immorality, amorality.
I would also change the story a little bit.
You want to change the story? Huh?
Yeah. My village,
What?
she. She took out a needle or something like that, and she pushed the whip down and the candle went out and she was free. I would have said. She took a match, she lit the candle. And now she was free.
That's possible. Anything is possible. You know the story about Tozan, who was famous, that we have a koan. Some of you studied this koan. He was, you know, a famous scholar of the Diamond Sutra and Heart Sutra. And he went south and met with his teacher and kept him up all night long, just talking his head off, you know. His teacher's listening, and, you know. And finally the teacher says, maybe it's time for you to go home, you know. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning. Goes on, says, okay. So he's walking out the door and the teacher lit a lantern for him as he walks out the door, the teacher blows out the lantern. And he's walking out as a lighting. So waking up takes place in all kinds of ways, surprising, but often takes place when the candle gets blown out. You can't see anything. The story of the Sufi fool who's looking for the key that he lost. And he's under a lamp, he's under a light. He's looking around for the key, and someone comes by and said, "What are you looking for?" He says, "Oh, I'm looking for a key. I lost my key." And they said, "Well, where did you last have it?" He said, "I had it over in that dark alley over there." They said, "Why aren't you looking over there?" I said, "I can't see." We're looking in the wrong place. We're looking in the wrong way. Well, okay. Anything else?
You're still alive.
Huh?
You're still.
You feeling hungry? Time for lunch?
Teisho knows.
Okay, Tenzo, get moving. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Roshi.